Turning 25 felt like a milestone. I had spent years working overtime, helping family whenever they called, and postponing things I wanted because there was always some crisis involving my younger sister. So for once, I decided to do something for myself. I rented a small event hall, invited friends, ordered a custom cake, and even splurged on a decent sound system. Nothing extravagant. Just a birthday where I could relax and enjoy being surrounded by people who actually wanted to celebrate with me. For the first hour, everything was perfect. My friends laughed, music played, and someone kept trying to convince everyone that pineapple belonged on pizza. The argument had become so heated that two guests were actually using paper plates as visual aids. Then my mother's phone rang. The moment she answered, her face turned pale. "It's Madison," she gasped. My father immediately stood up. "What happened?" According to my sister, she was stranded in another state. She claimed her car had broken down, her phone battery was dying, she had no money, and she was terrified. The story somehow became more dramatic every 30 seconds. By the end of the call, she sounded less like a woman on a road trip and more like the sole survivor of a disaster movie. My parents didn't even hesitate. They grabbed their coats and rushed for the door. I stood there holding a plastic cup. "Wait," I said. "What about the party?" My mother barely looked back. "Your sister needs us." And just like that, they were gone. The atmosphere changed instantly. Nobody knew what to say. A few guests awkwardly checked their phones. Others offered sympathetic smiles. One guy quietly asked if he could take some leftover wings home before leaving. Within an hour, the hall was nearly empty. One friend patted my shoulder and said, "Well, happy birthday, man." Then he carried away half a tray of mozzarella sticks. I couldn't even blame him. Eventually I found myself sitting alone beside a giant birthday cake designed for 30 people. The bakery had written, "Best year ever." The irony nearly killed me. I lit a single candle and sang happy birthday to myself. Halfway through, I forgot the words despite hearing the song my entire life. That somehow made it worse. Over the next few days, my parents barely contacted me. Every conversation revolved around Madison and her supposed emergency. They praised her bravery. They discussed her terrible experience. They acted as if she had survived an expedition through the wilderness. Then a week later, the truth appeared on social media. Madison hadn't been stranded. She hadn't been in danger. She hadn't even left the beach. Photo after photo showed her smiling with friends at a luxury resort. She was holding tropical drinks, dancing by the ocean, and posing beside a giant inflatable flamingo. One picture was even time-stamped during my birthday party. I stared at my phone in disbelief. When I confronted my parents, they looked uncomfortable for about 3 seconds. Then my father sighed. "It already happened." My mother nodded. "You should let it go." Let it go. The party. The lies. The fact that everyone had abandoned me on my birthday because my sister wanted attention. That night I sat alone in my apartment and thought about everything. For years I had chased their approval. For years I had accepted being second place. And for the first time, I stopped. I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't waste another year trying to convince people to value me. If they couldn't see my worth, that was their loss. I didn't know it then, but that ruined birthday would end up becoming the best thing that ever happened to me. After that birthday, something inside me changed. I stopped waiting for phone calls that never came. I stopped volunteering to solve family problems. Most importantly, I stopped measuring my value through the opinions of people who had spent years treating me like an optional extra in their lives. Instead, I focused on myself. The first few years weren't glamorous. I worked ridiculous hours in the hospitality industry. While other people spent weekends relaxing, I was dealing with difficult guests, broken equipment, staffing shortages, and enough paperwork to destroy entire forests. But every promotion taught me something. Every setback made me stronger. Eventually I started my own small vacation business. Then another. Then another. One property became 3. 3 became 10. Before I knew it, I owned one of the most successful luxury coastal resorts in the region. The place was famous for offering experiences nobody else could provide. Ocean view villas, private beaches, luxury entertainment, and thanks to recent technological advances, something even more unique: interstellar tourism. When Earth officially opened travel agreements with several friendly alien civilizations, my company was among the first to adapt. The opportunity was enormous. The learning curve was terrifying. For example, one species considered swimming pools a religious experience. Another thought bathrobes represented military rank. One extremely wealthy alien guest accidentally tried to purchase an entire lighthouse because he thought it was a decorative lamp. Running the resort became a daily comedy show. Then one afternoon, everything changed. I was inspecting one of our newest beachfront villas when I literally walked into someone. Not metaphorically. Literally. I turned a corner carrying a stack of reports and collided with a visitor. Papers exploded everywhere. Coffee flew through the air. And I somehow managed to trip over absolutely nothing. When I finally looked up from the ground, I found myself staring into bright silver eyes. She wasn't human. She was one of the newest arrivals participating in an interstellar business exchange program. And unfortunately, I was currently sitting on the floor covered in coffee. For several seconds she simply stared at me. Then she laughed. Not a polite laugh. A full, uncontrollable laugh. To my surprise, I started laughing too. The situation was too ridiculous not to. That was how we met. Over the following months, we kept running into each other. Sometimes intentionally. Sometimes accidentally. She possessed a sharp sense of humor and an endless fascination with human behavior. I learned she had built several successful businesses on her homeworld. She learned humans apparently celebrated surviving another year by placing fire on desserts. The birthday candle incident became legendary. After watching guests cheer while a cake arrived covered in flames, she immediately activated emergency protocols on her communicator. Half the security team arrived before we convinced her nobody was actually in danger. For weeks afterward, she called birthday parties, organized fire emergencies. The more time we spent together, the closer we became. Unlike my family, she listened when I spoke. Unlike my family, she respected my opinions. Unlike my family, she never treated me as second place. Our friendship slowly turned into something deeper. Something real. Together we expanded the resort into the most successful interstellar vacation destination on Earth. Visitors arrived from multiple star systems. Human tourists loved the novelty. Alien tourists loved the beaches. Everyone loved the gift shop except for the accountant. The accountant hated everything. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't trying to earn affection. I wasn't begging to be noticed. I had built a successful business. I had surrounded myself with loyal friends. And somehow, against all odds, I had fallen in love with the most incredible woman in the galaxy. Looking back, I realized something. The family I spent years trying to keep together had never truly appreciated me. But the life I built afterward? That was worth more than anything they had ever taken away. 9 years passed without much contact from my family. Occasionally I would receive a holiday message that looked suspiciously copied and pasted. Sometimes there would be a short phone call lasting less than 5 minutes. Other than that, we lived completely separate lives. Which was why I nearly dropped my coffee when my mother suddenly called one morning. Not texted. Not emailed. Called. The first thing she said wasn't, "How have you been?" It wasn't, "We miss you." It wasn't even, "We're sorry." Instead she said, "We need a favor." I almost laughed. Some things never changed. As it turned out, my sister was getting married. Apparently her fiancé came from a wealthy family, and she wanted a wedding so extravagant that guests would talk about it for decades. Naturally, she wanted to host the entire event at my resort. More specifically, she wanted me to provide everything. For free. The venue. The catering. The accommodations. The entertainment. The decorations. The transportation. At one point I was fairly certain she expected me to personally control the weather. A week later, my parents and sister arrived at the resort for planning meetings. The reunion felt strangely surreal. 9 years had passed, but they behaved as though our last conversation happened yesterday. My mother hugged me. My father smiled. My sister immediately complained about the room temperature. Somehow that felt perfectly on brand. I introduced them to the resort facilities. The private villas. The beach areas. The event halls. The luxury suites. Instead of appreciation, Madison treated everything like a shopping catalog. I want this section redesigned. And that fountain should be bigger. Can we move the beach closer to the ballroom? I blinked. Move the beach. The actual ocean. Closer. Even my event manager looked confused. Meanwhile, my girlfriend sat quietly beside me, observing everything. She possessed an extraordinary ability to notice patterns. Within 2 hours she had already identified the family dynamic. Later she leaned toward me and whispered, "Your sister believes gravity is optional." I nearly choked trying not to laugh. As wedding planning continued, Madison's requests became increasingly ridiculous. She wanted imported flowers from 3 planets. She wanted synchronized fireworks. She wanted floating crystal decorations suspended over the ocean. She even requested a choir composed entirely of alien musicians because she thought it would look fashionable in photographs. The estimated cost became absolutely absurd. Yet every time someone questioned her demands, my parents repeated the same phrase. Family comes first. The words followed me everywhere. Family comes first. Family comes first. Family comes first. Eventually, I couldn't ignore the irony anymore. During one meeting, while everyone discussed luxury seating arrangements, I quietly set down my coffee. The room fell silent. I looked directly at my parents. "Do you remember my 25th birthday?" Nobody spoke. My mother's smile disappeared. My father suddenly became fascinated by a nearby wall. Madison stared at the table. For several uncomfortable seconds, silence filled the room. Then my sister finally muttered, "That was a long time ago." I nodded slowly. Interesting answer. Nobody laughed. Nobody argued. Because everyone remembered. The cancelled party. The fake emergency. The lies. The beach vacation. The birthday cake I ate alone. My girlfriend glanced around the room before discreetly making a note on her tablet. Curious, I looked over. She had created something called Family Hypocrisy Score. Beside my parents' names were surprisingly high numbers. Beside Madison's name was a score so large it required scrolling. I almost burst out laughing. But underneath the humor, something unexpected happened. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. 9 years earlier, that memory would have ruined my entire week. Now it barely hurt. Because my happiness no longer depended on them. I had built something bigger than their approval. Something stronger than their favoritism. As the meeting continued, everyone assumed the wedding plans were moving forward. Nobody noticed the idea quietly forming in my mind. After all, emergencies happen. And sometimes celebrations have to be cancelled. At least that's what my family taught me. Wedding week arrived with absolute chaos. Luxury shuttles transported guests from spaceports and airports. Staff members hurried across the resort preparing decorations. Florists worked around the clock. Musicians rehearsed. Event coordinators carried clipboards like they were preparing for a military operation. Meanwhile, my sister walked around issuing orders as though she owned the entire property. At one point she demanded that a sunset be delayed because it conflicted with her photography schedule. The photographer actually wrote that request down before realizing what she had said. 3 days before the ceremony, I invited my parents, Madison, and her fiancé to a private conference room. They entered smiling. My father looked excited. My mother looked relieved. Madison looked like someone expecting to receive a crown. I placed several documents on the table. "What's this?" my sister asked. "A formal notice," I replied. She opened the folder. The smile disappeared instantly. My mother grabbed another copy. My father's face turned pale. Across the top of the page were the words: Event cancellation notice. Reason: unexpected emergency. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Madison exploded. What do you mean cancelled? My father stood up. Is this some kind of joke? My mother looked horrified. Guests are already arriving. I calmly folded my hands. I know. Madison practically screamed. You can't do this. I nodded thoughtfully. Interesting. What is that supposed to mean? It means I've heard those exact words before. The room became silent. Everyone understood immediately. 9 years earlier. My 25th birthday. The fake emergency. The abandoned party. The lonely cake. My girlfriend calmly activated a large screen behind me. A slideshow appeared. Beach photographs. Vacation selfies. Videos. Timestamps. Every piece of evidence proving Madison had spent my birthday relaxing at a resort, while claiming she was stranded and helpless. Several wedding planners watching from the back of the room gasped. One nearly dropped his tablet. Madison looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. My father sat down heavily. My mother covered her face. For the first time in years, nobody rushed to defend Madison. Nobody made excuses. Nobody told me to let it go. Finally, my mother spoke quietly. We were wrong. My father nodded. We should have never treated you that way. Madison stared at the table. Then, surprisingly, she sighed. Okay. Fine. I lied. The confession seemed to drain all the energy from her. I wanted attention. I didn't think it would matter that much. I laughed softly. That's exactly the problem. It mattered. For a moment nobody spoke. Then my girlfriend reached over and squeezed my hand. The gesture reminded me that I wasn't that lonely 25-year-old anymore. I wasn't seeking revenge. I wasn't trying to hurt them. The lesson had already been delivered. So I slid another folder across the table. Madison blinked. What now? A revised wedding package. The extravagant free wedding was gone. Instead, I offered a smaller event at a normal paying customer rate. Still beautiful. Still luxurious. Just no special treatment. No impossible demands. No family discounts. My parents exchanged glances before agreeing. Even Madison accepted. For once, she didn't argue. A few days later, the wedding went ahead smoothly. Ironically, guests enjoyed the simpler version far more than the ridiculous original plan. Months afterward, relationships slowly improved. Not perfectly, but honestly. And on my next birthday, something unexpected happened. My friends organized a massive celebration. The resort staff joined in. Alien guests performed a hilariously terrible birthday song that lasted nearly 15 minutes. Someone even created a giant sash labeled Emergency Coordinator and convinced Madison to wear it all night. The photos were priceless. As I stood beside the woman I loved, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, I finally understood something important. Success wasn't making my family regret how they treated me. Success was building a life so full of happiness, love, laughter, and purpose that their approval no longer mattered. 9 years earlier they canceled my birthday. In the end, all they really did was give me the push I needed to create a better future than I ever imagined.